Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. I have a motion moved by Carol Lawrence, seconded by Bev Cutting. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby returns, to open session of Council at 10:10 a.m. Any questions on the motion? Call. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. There we are, Joanne. And Joanne, only those matters that only the matters that were noted were the only matters that were discussed in closed session. Okay, we have no public meetings. The consent agenda, I have a motion moved by Rob Thompson, seconded by Doug Hutchison. Be it resolved that items A1 to C1 inclusive contained in Part 1 consent agenda be adopted, and further that authorization be given for the actions to be taken as may be necessary to give effect to the recommendations contained therein. Any questions on the consent this morning? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Very good. I'll ask Joanne, for everybody out there, Ms. Christie is filling in for Mark as he is off on training this morning. So if you thought that Mark had his good looks had improved dramatically, you're correct out there, they have. So thank you for helping us out today, Joanne. So we'll get those motions coming forward. Award of tenders. Whoops, gone too far. That brings us down to communication from Mayor and Council. Is there any communications or good news that Council would like to make anybody aware of? Councillor Lawrence. Carol?
Thank you. Just to tell you that the Durham Girls Alumni Band had a very successful yard sale Friday and Saturday, and they are expressing their thanks to Council and the Municipality for providing the yard. And June the 6th, Saturday this week, is the village-wide yard sale in Newstead that's sponsored by the Recreation Committee. And I'm sure the Ellenwood guys are going to mention this, but the Ellenwood firemen have their breakfast this Saturday as well. And I expect, Mr. Mayor, you're going to report on Saturday night's celebration at Stothard.
Any other communications? Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
A couple things. Just like to announce that on June 21st actually is the longest day of play, which is supported by the Grey Bruce Health Unit, and working on some activities. It's this year, unfortunately it's on Father's Day, so trying to work some activities in the area, coordinate with them. May not happen necessarily on the 21st, but on the 20th, and even through that week, some communities are using that week to sort of promote physical activity for children and getting out and doing things. So we're putting together some activities which will be advertised in the near future. Things like swimming and baseball, the ball day that they're having in Durham. We're going to coordinate with that. So that's coming up, longest day of play, June 21st. The other thing is I have an invite from J.E. Trim. They're celebrating their 25 years in business. For those that may not know, J.E. Trim is one of our businesses in the industrial park at the south end of town, and they've been 25 years at the trim business and moldings, and they're having an open house on June 11th, Thursday, June 11th, 10 to 12 or 3 to 6. And I just wanted to mention that to Council. If anyone's interested in dropping by, just maybe let me know when they're interested in numbers, that's all. So sort of an open invite for you people, and I'm sure if other people wanted to go, that if they call them, they could pop in. So that's coming up on Thursday, June 11th.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? As Carol had mentioned, on Saturday night, there was a celebration of life for a former employee, a contract employee of the municipality. Les McKinnon was our environmental services officer since the inception of the amalgamated municipality of West Grey. Les passed away on May the 11th, and his family, and at his request, there was a celebration at Stoddart Hall on Saturday night. Councillor Lawrence was there, and I was there. A great tribute to a very community-minded individual. Les had quite a few uniquenesses about him, and I think I've expressed that here before, but listening to a number of speakers, I believe there was 5, Carol, that spoke, the breadth of influence that Les had, from a local men's club through to international Black History, the setting up of the Ontario Black History Association. Les was one of the pioneers in that, and one of the founding members of Black History in Ontario, and certainly across North America. Source water protection and his environmental concerns and expertise was always questioned, but always in the best way. And Les, with his loyalty and his own uniqueness, always had an answer for any of the questions that anybody posed to Mr. McKinnon. So that was on Saturday in Priceville, Saturday night. A great tribute to Les, and a great tribute to somebody that I called a friend as well, as more so than an employee with the municipality. Then on Sunday night, another one of our residents celebrated his 50th anniversary of being an ordained minister. Dave Nicholson, who has been the minister charged in Priceville for the last 10 years, celebrated, and they had a celebration at the Priceville St. Andrew's Church last night with quite a bit of music, local talent. Reverend Dave has started the St. Andrew's Strings. He is a great fiddle player, very passionate about that, and has started that a number of years ago. So it's a little different to go to church and be led in the singing of the hymns with a fiddle. But if anybody is interested, most services at St. Andrew's, Reverend Dave will be pulling out his fiddle and playing the hymns in concert with the organ as well too. But very unique individual, and congratulations to Dave on 50 years of being an ordained minister. And I see somebody in the audience smiling about that who may have a little bit of knowledge of Dave as well too. So, and again, thank you to a couple of the individuals on council for representing. I had the opportunity to representing me while I was away last week at OAPSB, Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, their annual general meeting and conference in Toronto. Started on Wednesday morning with some training. The big thing on the conference and around policing is that the Police Services Act, since the first time since 1994, will be opened up. The minister spoke with us and has stated that by this fall they will be opening up the Police Services Act for review. OAPSB is very much in favor of doing that and looking forward to input from across the province on changes that have happened with policing and how that can be put into the legislation going forward to help out public safety. That was the biggest kind of announcement. It wasn't a well-kept secret. I think most of us knew that that was going to be coming forward. Also on probably the theme of the conference was on governance and certainly coming out in 2013, the Morden report after the G20 incidents in Toronto, and that the boards are more legislated, have more legislative power than we've probably been taking into consideration on around governance and around the operations, governing the operations. So there will be certainly a lot more going forward in the Police Services Act, may be putting into requirements. One of the things is the knowledge, the breadth, the training that is going to be required for boards. Some of it gets a little bit frightful of how far we're going to go with that for individuals that are on boards, on police services boards. But I think the biggest thing that has to be understood, there are a couple of police services in Ontario that are operating with billion-dollar budgets, and those boards are responsible for those services. So a lot more emphasis are going to be put on going into the future on the capabilities and competencies of the board members going forward, and we'll be looking to have input on that review as it comes forward. As an announcement as well too, in my other capacity as warden, I will be leaving on Thursday to go to Edmonton to FCM. So if there's any issues with potholes or barking dogs, John Bell's phone number is in the book. Please phone him. I'll be gone from Thursday till Tuesday at FCM, so be back at that point in time. Anything else? Bev?
Yes, I would just like to mention that as a member of the Police Services Board, I went to the visitation for Rob Moore. His mother, Betty Moore, sits on our Police Services Board, and I was there to not only as a friend, but to represent the board in the really sad passing of Rob Moore. And I'm also want to say that I wanted to attend the Les McKinnon as a friend and a co-worker. I've worked with him for 20 years, and he was with Glenelg Council before he was here. I was unable to attend. My father had a mild heart attack, so I ended up in the hospital all day on Saturday. So it was something I just couldn't muster to do at the end of that day. But anyways, I just wanted to mention that our condolences go to Betty in the passing of her son as part of our Police Services Board.
Thank you. Yes, and I pass on our condolences certainly to Betty, and our best wishes to your dad as well too. Hopefully he's recovering well. Okay. Anything else? Communications from Mayor and Council? If not, we're doing not too bad, Donna. We're, I heard last night Minister Nicholson had mentioned he had been at a number of charges, and he said that, Priceville operated on time, McEachern time. Durham was very much on time. He had the fortune of being in Jamore Church a couple of times as well, and I think you've been there as well too. So we're just operating on Jamore time. I know we have you down here for 10:15, it's 10:25, so it's Jamore time, and you'll recognize that and understand it. So we have Donna Mann here with us on the update and some thoughts on the Pioneer West Bentinck Cemetery. So Donna, I'll turn the floor over to you. And you'll find one button there, I think. There it is.
Good morning, Mayor Eccles, Deputy Mayor Bell, councillors, clerk, and members. Thank you for this welcome. I have to say that every time I come here, I feel welcome. I feel that we're in team when this project we're on. So I thank you for that. This visit to council is to report on the last stages of the project. The cemetery service rededication will be June 28th at 3 o'clock. And I trust, Mayor Kevin, you will honor the rededication with a few words, as indicated in a previous email. Thank you. This township is definitely making that cemetery location a proud part of Gray. They've been under the direction of Ken Gould and Tim Cook and the crew. The road, the parking area, the maintenance of the cemetery is all happening. It's all being completed. A member of the crew showed us a couple of weeks ago the circumference and the corner posts of the original Pioneer Cemetery. And we were delighted to find those posts were still there. They're slanted and they're overgrown with the brush, but they are still there. Conversation is continuing just at these last few weeks about ways to complete our original request before the June 28th day, and the planting of a few trees across the path that leads up into kind of nowhere up there. There's nothing really to see up there except the old fence bottoms of the cemetery, and they're kind of, laid down rusty and so forth, and then it goes off into property that's not our responsibility or of interest. And secondly, the shrubbery that they talked about trimming just at the edges to indicate the cemetery boundaries. And some of this has already been completed, and we haven't been out there for a couple of weeks, so it may already have had a start. I put a website up, and not right now, but you can go to it on your own time or coffee break. I think you'll find it interesting. It's just West Bentinck Presbyterian Cemetery.homestead.com. I will send my notes in so that you'll have that. Or you can Google it. It'll come right up for you. In recent months, something else that's been very exciting for me has happened, and that is a local committee has been formed, one of which is Brenda Calder, who will speak in a few moments to the hope for the future of the cemetery. Because my resident location now is down Wellington County, and so I will not continue to serve, but I do thank you for your interest and your cooperation during this time. Brenda, would you like to come and say a few words?
Your Worship and members of Township Council and staff, this is my first time to this Township Council, and I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you for your time on your agenda. It was the initiative of Donna Mann to rededicate the West Bentinck Pioneer Cemetery, and I thank Donna for that initiative because it is holy ground. And one of the first deputy reeves of this township, Walter Laidlaw, rests there. And so we're pleased to make this, again, to rededicate it as holy ground. I want to thank the Township Council, too, for their cooperative spirit in maintaining the roads. It's been improved and cleaning things up, and look forward to continuing to work together. After the rededication of the cemetery, we're hoping to have a cemetery board formed. We would also like to put up a sign, use some of the donations that day to put up a sign to recognize that area. And so we would look to continue to work together in that cooperative spirit, and again, to continue the road maintenance and the perpetual care together. So again, I thank you for this, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brenda. Donna, I'm going to ask, are there any questions or interest at this point in time? I think we're... Absolutely, we can put those up. Your choice of time on the 28th, but we still may be able to do it, I guess. The Durham Cemetery dedication day is the same day. Yeah, we'll see if we can keep them on time. As an individual that suffers from Drumore time, I'm going to try and make both. I'll just say that. And we certainly have done what we can, and I've got my commitment to Ken to help out where we can and how we can with that. Interesting that you would say that you're going to put a cemetery board together. Looking at Carrie and thinking there's been a couple of times in the past few years that the interest has waned on some of those historical cemeteries that have been out there, and we've taken over a little more active role in some of those. But I think it certainly is a community input that helps keeps. And I'll say it help keeps those cemeteries alive. That's kind of an oxymoron, but the two cemeteries, those cemeteries are certainly where we've came from. And I know a former Reeve of Bentic and Mayor of the Municipality of West Grey had always said, we can't go forward until we understand where we've came from. And that was a quote from Delton Becker. So I look forward to continuing the work with yourself, Brenda. And just because you're in Wellington County, Donna, you know, we share a fairly large border with Wellington County. You've got free access back and forth across the border into West Grey at any time. Greatly appreciated. So thank you very much this morning, ladies. And if there's anything, please get in touch with us. Ken's more than willing to help out. I think we've seen that in the past. So thank you. It's a public meeting. You can stay as long as you want, but I know you've got bigger things to do out there today, continuing on. Thanks, Brenda. Thanks, Donna. Okay. Our second delegation this morning, Elaine Bonnert is the Senior Manager for BDO, is our audit. BDO does the audit for West Grey, and I think we're getting to the point of just about being complete, this being one of the last things on that agenda for auditors that are a must to do. Elaine's here to present the financial statements of 2014 for West Grey, so I'll turn it over to you, Elaine. I think it's on the right side. There you are. Everything you're seeing now is recorded. Adam's got that out there, so.
So you just heard me drop a bunch of papers then too.
I didn't want to shock you that much, just for you. Anyways.
It's all on a slant.
Yeah. Yes, well, the numbers. Tell me that the numbers aren't on a slant. We'll be okay.
No, the numbers are not on a slant. The
No.
table is.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to you, Elaine. Thank you.
And I'm more coordinated with numbers than I am with objects. All right, so you have all been emailed a PDF package of the financial statements and our draft auditor's report thereon. So if you'd like to turn to page 2, that is our independent auditor's report. We have audited the accompanying consolidated financial statements of the Corporation of the Municipality of West Grey, which comprise the consolidated statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2014, and the consolidated statement of operations, changes in net financial assets, and cash flows for the year then ended, and a summary of significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. So the second paragraph there outlines what management's responsibility is towards the consolidated financial statements. And it is management's responsibility to accumulate all the numbers up that we're going to use in the financial statements, as well as determining the proper amount of internal controls to ensure that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. Further on down in the auditor's report, it talks about what the auditor's responsibility is. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the consolidated financial statements. We conducted our audit in accordance with the generally accepted auditing standards in Canada. Those standards require that we comply with ethical requirements and plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the consolidated financial statements are free of material misstatement. So we do this by performing audit procedures to give us evidence that the amounts and disclosures in the consolidated financial statements are free of material misstatement. So we believe that we have collected enough evidence to support our opinion. So on page 3, we give our opinion. In our opinion, the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the corporation of the municipality, of West Grey as at December 31st, 2014, and the results of its operations, its change in net debt, and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's your clean audit opinion. On page 4, we'll hit some of the highlights of the statement of financial position, but if anybody has questions at any point, please stop me and ask. I'll do my best to answer, or Carrie can chime in as well. Okay. So the first item on the statement of financial position is cash, and more details about cash are disclosed in note 1 on page 11. So your cash is very comparable to last year. Note 1 just breaks down between your restricted and unrestricted cash. The amount of restricted cash is the amount of your obligatory reserve funds, your development charge fund, your subdividers, and your parkland. Continuing down, your statement of financial position is temporary investments, $238,000 this year versus $240,000 last year, so not a very big swing. Taxes receivable continues to be a bit of a struggle in this area. It's gone up again this year by about $410,000. Taxes in arrears 1 year or more are up $285,000, and penalties and interest receivable are up $100,000. So there have been some efforts made here to register a bunch of properties for tax sale to try and get that number down hopefully next year. Grants and subsidies receivable, $190,000 this year versus $134,000 last year. The biggest change in that would be the Shank Municipal Drain. There's $107,000 receivable from the government at the end of the year. Continuing down the line there, trade and other receivables, $1.2 million this year versus $784,000 last year. The biggest increase there is, once again, the Shank Municipal Drain. The benefiting landowners, $219,000 that they owe right at the end of the year. So that will be coming in. Also, increase over last year, HST receivable is up $116,000 over last year. Other items that make up that $1.2 million will be your water and sewer billings receivable, your ice rental and other recreation billings, tile drain loans receivable. Those are the big items that make up that $1.2 million. Continuing down the page, liabilities. Accounts payable and accrued liabilities are $1.9 million this year versus $1.4 last year. So your increase of about $521,000. So the main reasons for that increase, right at the end of the year, there was a payment outstanding for the Elmwood fire truck that was purchased for $217,000. Also $226,000 for the Shank Municipal Drain, and about $45,000 for Newstead storm sewers. Other than that, majority or all of the rest of that is just normal trade accounts payable for the municipality. Next item on the list is deferred revenue, and it's detailed in note 4, page 12. So on page 12, we've got your obligatory reserve funds listed down there, as well as other deferred revenue. The big swings this year, development charges, you brought in $113,700 in development charges fees, and you spent $19,000 in the Public Works Fund, from the Public Works Fund. The other large change is your gas tax grant. You received $365,000 this year. You spent $411,000, so you spent what you got in this year plus a little bit of the carry forward from prior years. So back to the consolidated statement of financial position again. The next item on the list is your long-term debt. You're at $1.48 million this year versus $1.7 million last year. a decrease of $234,000, which is due to your scheduled repayments. There's nothing unusual happened there this year, just your regular scheduled payments. The next item down is landfill site closure and post-closure liability, $574,000 this year versus $821,000 last year. You'll notice that there's a big drop there this year, and that's because there was a new engineer study done this year. The last one was completed in 2009, but since that time, the municipality found that they had not incurred some of the expected costs that were listed in the 2009 estimate. So the estimate that was done in 2014 took out a lot of those costs. So it's hopefully a more realistic number. But it is a big number and a big estimate, so you have to take that one with a grain of sand. The next item down is your employee future benefit liability, $232,000 this year versus $218,000 last year, so fairly comparable. There's more detail about it in note 7 on page 14 and 15. So on page 14, the beginning of note 7 talks about OMERS, and the amount that the municipality contributed to OMERS in 2014 was $357,813. The note goes on to give some details about how the OMERS plan stands. It's got a $7.1 billion actuarial deficit right now for its deficit. So you can take from that what you want. It could result in future increases in rates. They've got to be able to fund it at some point. Okay, on page 15, note 7 continues, and it talks about your own employee future benefit liability of $232,000. This is post-employment health and dental insurance benefits for eligible retired employees. And there was a new actuarial evaluation done in 2014. Continuing down on page 4 again, the consolidated statement of financial position. We've got prepaid expenses and inventories of supplies, very comparable to last year. There was a small increase in your inventory, and that's because there was a new columbarium constructed at the cemetery, so it's increased for that. Also on your statement of financial position is your tangible capital assets of $74,524,000 this year versus $75,438,000, and that's detailed on page 16. So note 8 on page 16 shows you your opening costs, your additions, your disposals. So the biggest additions for the year were Newstead Storm Sewer for $371,000, your Shank Municipal Drain for $327,000, and the elevator at the Durham Arena for $125,000. The disposals noted there of $293,000. The largest one there would be the 790 Garifraxis Street you sold for $107,000. Okay, so that's it for note 8. So we're kind of flipping back and forth. Back to the statement of financial position. Your accumulated surplus at the end of the year, $76,861,000. That's detailed in note 9 on page 18. So note 9 shows you that your general surplus is $348,000. Capital amounts to be financed in the future, $339,000. So that's mostly your Durham local improvements and George Street property that will be financed when it's sold. That's the unfinanced capital. Also in note 9, amounts invested in tangible capital assets is $74 million. Reserves and reserve funds set aside for a specific purpose by council is detailed in note 10. You will have also received the schedule from Carrie that you're used to seeing in a lot of detail. Note 10 just provides a summary. And amounts to be recovered of $2.2 million is detailed in note 11. So that's long-term debt, your employee future benefits, and your landfill closure and post-closure care liability. Those are amounts that you haven't had to finance yet. You'll finance in the future when the liabilities due. Okay, there's more detail about your general surplus in note 9, breaking down waterworks and wastewater. But I think the important number in that note is your general area taxation. So the amount of surplus or deficit that you need to adjust your budget for in the current year is $501,884. So I ran through that statement of financial position fairly quickly. Are there any questions on that at all? No? Okay. Seeing none, I'll continue on to page 5, the consolidated statement of operations. Taxation revenue, you had 7.8 million raised this year versus 7.5 million last year. You budgeted at 7.7 million. So the only difference between your actual and your budget is for subs and write-offs in the year. Government transfers, there's note 12, details government transfers. There's not a huge change over last year. It's down mostly due to OMPF funding. You knew about that when you were doing your budgeting, so it's equal to budget. Okay. Next line down, water and wastewater charges, very comparable to last year, just slightly over $1 million this year and last year. User fees and service charges, 1.7 million this year versus 1.2 million last year. The biggest increase there is from your building permits. They're up 220,000 this year from the wind turbines, and 300,000 overall up. So there was a bit of a boom in building permits this year. Investment income, small, 35,000 this year versus 33,000 last year. Other income is detailed in note 13 on page 22. 801,000 this year versus 444,000 last year. So what makes that up? Penalty and interest on taxes at 380,000 this year versus 327,000 last year. So it's increased because your accounts receivable have increased. Donations and prepaid special charges were 330,000 this year versus 53,000 last year. The biggest increase there is because of the 220,000 from the Shank Municipal Drains. So back to your consolidated statement of operations. We're down to the line that's obligatory reserve fund revenue recognized, 26,000 this year. And then we move down to expenses. So on your statement of operations, expenses are outlined by department. For further information on page 24 and 25 is your segment disclosure. It gives you expenses not only by department, but it also gives them by object. So salaries, materials and supplies, etc. They're all detailed there. Overall, though, your expenses they came in over budget by 457,000, or about 3% of your budget. But your annual surplus or deficit came in at 155,000 deficit, but you had budgeted for $538,000 deficit. Excuse me. Sorry, that got me choked up, but it's good. So you actually came in better than budget by 383,000. So that's it for page 5. Page 6 is your statement of change in net financial assets. So this statement starts off with your annual surplus or deficit and reconciles down to your change in net financial assets, which was basically the way that council used to budget prior to PSAB. So it just reconciles out your capital assets and your change in your non-financial assets to get your net financial assets. Page 7, your statement of cash flows. There's basically 3 numbers that I want to highlight in the statement of cash flows. Halfway down the page is your cash generated by operating activities, just over 2 million. And then this statement shows where you used that 2 million. So you generated 2 million from your operations, you spent it on capital activities of 1.8 million, so your capital assets, and paying off your debt of 200,000. So your net change in cash was $10,000 this year. Pages 8 through 10 are your summary of significant accounting policies. Those policies did not change this year. And I think we've hit the highlights of all the rest of the notes up until page 26. Page 26 is a quick summary of all your government partnerships. You have the full copy of their financial statements attached in your package, I believe. Note 16, budget amounts. This note takes in and reconciles from your surplus according to PSAB down to your general surplus for budgeting purposes. So the first column, the 2014 budget column, shows that you have come down to a balanced budget of 0. And for your actuals, that you are to the good by $348,000. Note 17 on page 28 outlines how much taxation revenue the Municipality of West Grey has collected on behalf of the school boards and the County of Grey, total of $8.3 million for the two organizations. Note 18 outlines your trust funds, and they're detailed in their own financial statements attached to the package. Note 19, contractual commitments. The municipality has pledged support to the Markdale Hospital in the amount of $190,000 over 10 years. And the last note is a contingency. The municipality has entered into an employment contract with certain municipal employees that requires a monthly payment of 100% of the employee's disposable after-tax income, less payments from workers' comp and CPP, to the family of the employee if the employee is killed or dies in the line of duty. And the municipality has insurance to cover yourself if you ever had costs under that. So that's it. Any questions?
Any questions at this time for Elaine? Any comments, Carrie, of working with Elaine and her great crew of young lads?
Exactly. They're very easy to work with, and I think we have a good relationship with BDO. We have worked well together.
Absolutely. We certainly know that their time in the office is a little bit stressful, trying to get things done and then finding papers for auditors, but each year, Carrie, I concur with you that it goes very well, and a good working relationship with BDO, and I would hope that council will continue that.
Our staff feel the same way. We always have great cooperation from your staff. It's pleasant to work here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that certainly that one of the staff is very active in West Grey and lives here, and we, as you said, by the building department, the increase there, we are building. You can all move here if you want as well too, to live in paradise.
If we didn't have snow in this area, I like living in the town where I work. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Fine.
All right,
Yeah.
yes. So you'll notice that the package that I sent you has a draft marked across that, and that's because the financial statements are considered draft until council approves them. So at some point in your meeting today, I think you should have a motion to approve the draft statements.
And on our agenda, yes, I believe Carrie has that already prepared for us, and looking forward to that. Yeah. So again, thank you very much, Elaine, for the time this morning, and thank you for the advice and the clean statement and the work that you and your staff do and the working relationship you have with West Grey. It's greatly appreciated, and we'll take some of those notes. I know that working back and forth, there's a couple of places where we can certainly improve, and I know that we've are putting those processes in place. That this is a good audited statement for 2014. Credit to staff for getting us to this position, and we look forward to even a better one for 2015. Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, with that out of the way, is there any business arising from the previous meeting? Seeing none? We'll go down to staff reports. And the first staff report we have is, if I'm not mistaken, is our financial. And yes, I see that Carrie's decided to move away when we get down to this point of the meeting. How be we jump, and we'll wait for Carrie as she ushers the auditor out the door, if we can. Ken, is there a chance we can move on to your report? Which I believe is on page 90, no, 83. Okay. So starting, Ken, your report, the first report is dealing with information session with Grey Highlands and Chatsworth.
Yes, I met with Chris Cornfield, the Director of Operations at the Grey Highlands last week, and they're interested in having West Grey come to the table to join the Township of Chatsworth and the Municipality of Grey Highlands in discussions on waste management, how to, whether they can work together to find more efficiencies and improve the waste management system for all three municipalities. But he was trying to get some dates set up for a meeting, but as of yet I haven't got anything. But they have currently they have their mayor and I believe in Chatsworth it's the mayor and deputy mayor, and Grey Highlands they have a mayor and they have their mayor and the one of the councillors sitting on the joint committee. So they've asked if West Grey would be interested in coming to the table and join in the discussions.
We do have a waste management subcommittee. My thoughts are that somebody from that committee could certainly be the political representation with you, Ken. Any thoughts of council on going forward and coordinating and information for more than anything? Carol, Councillor Lawrence. Bev, could you turn on Miss Lawrence's microphone?
Sorry, but she'll have to do it herself with my arms
Sorry
not
about
that long.
Would you be sitting on that as well, Mr. Mayor?
I don't think it's
Probably not time.
totally necessary. I got great faith in the rest of my council here. Yeah, time would be a little bit difficult for myself.
I'd like to suggest that Rob Thompson be our representative. Are you not on part of the waste management? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were. Well, I thought we had three. I thought it was, Don, I forgot. I thought it was you, Rob. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, well, probably Don has been involved for a long time in waste management and was the chair of waste management, so, when we had committees.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly knows all about the things that have gone in the past, so perhaps Don would be the right person. Unless he's too busy too, because he gets into his busy season. You'd have to answer that one.
So there's a place for a couple of individuals, and we have three on, and one has already said that he really doesn't want to be on. The other two are
Are you doing the whole
Not-
committee to go?
no, I was just saying there's three political representatives on that committee, so two should go, and I'm not, so I'm looking at Don nodding his head saying, yeah, that would be okay. Now I got to turn this way to make sure Doug's going to nod his head and say he'd like to travel over to Priceville or...
Yeah, are you thinking Reno because Ken would be on that committee, would he not?
Yeah, Ken would be
But
on
you-
a staff resource or whatever, yeah.
Right. I don't mind going on it, but I don't know whether you want to send three. or
Okay, you're on it.
not. But Don has already said that he doesn't mind.
Two councillors and staff.
Oh, they want two councillors and staff.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
The other two
I
municipalities have
Yeah.
two political or elected
Sure.
representatives.
Yeah, I don't mind. Actually, I'm going to Joyce and I are going to workshop information session this Thursday in in Blue Mountains regarding waste management and new ideas and that type of thing. So, sure.
Okay. We may, Ken, you don't have a resolution here, so we may introduce that as a notice of motion, just to do that by resolution, appoint Don and Doug, and coordinate it through yourself with the joint, going with the joint board? Okay. All right, Bev, further?
Just because of the
Don, can you turn the microphone on?
Just because of the season, should we have like, I could be an alternate, just in case one of them, just with Dawn being busy and me being busy, between the two of us, we could probably. Do you want an alternate or no? It's up to you. Doesn't hurt because it is.
Doesn't hurt. Now
No.
when we've got it, that it's a need, sure. So we'll put that motion together for Doug and Don and Bev as an alternate. Okay? Look forward to that coming under notice of motion then. Bring that up there. Okay, that's good for that. Ken, vendor tags, and we've found the two, the bylaws coming forward. Any questions for Ken on that? Speaking of waste management. Go ahead, Ken, if you got anything else to report.
No, that's all I have at this time. This was discussed at the Committee of the Whole, I believe, and we're fortunate enough to have two businesses step forward and to continue the sale of bag tags in the two areas in Newstead and Hayton. So.
Okay, great. Ken, good work to find somebody to step up as one of the businesses down there is backed away from it. Okay. Any other questions for Ken at this point in time? Seeing none? Then we'll go back to Carrie's report. Somebody give me what page number that is again? 60. Thanks, Don. Whoops. So the first part, Gary, of your report is the vouchers. Voucher number 10. Have that presented to us before we introduce the motion to accept. Is there any questions on the vouchers? Rob? Councillor Thompson.
This is in regards to the road tour. Yes, we did put tender or request quotes, and this quote was the lowest tender, providing the best service.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? I have one question, Carrie, and it's kind of in a general nature. Saw the other day that Town of Hanover is doing a lot with LED lighting. We have put some of those lights in, haven't gone to a full broad. Westario, and with that, we're billed on, it's kind of a formula on that. Does Westario, have they given us credit for the lights that we've put in on the number and reduced our energy consumption as of yet?
Do you know, Ken, have they?
It would be Hydro One, it'd be in Hayton. But I don't think that we've ever got any credit for installing the light, for decreasing the invoice. I don't believe there's been anything.
Can we check on that? Because it wasn't this conference, it was the OSM conference I was at. Company that we've consulted with on that, Earth Tech, I believe. And And there may be some savings on notification there, certainly with Ayton, if we can do that. Okay. All right. Any other questions then? Do you have that motion? I'll send it that way. Yep. Send it out there and we'll get it. There's nothing else then? Thanks, Joanne. I have a motion moved by Bev Cutting and seconded by Don B. Marshall. Be it resolved that the Director of Finance Treasurer be authorized to pay the accounts presented as voucher number 10, 2015 of the Municipality of West Grey in the amount of $457,382.88. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. And carried. Down to the next report is on the Elmwood Library transfer. And there's a slight adjustment that you want to make to that from the previous council meeting?
We had previously discussed it at the committee of the whole meeting, and there was just a further invoice that was submitted, and then the one expense item related directly to the grant for technology. So they have gone ahead with that. So just doing that small adjustment, it brings it down to $20,398.71 for the reserve transfer for Elmwood Library by the municipality.
Do you have a motion for that? Went through the consent. I believe it went in the consent is where it was, so we're good with it. Yeah, because it come through committee of the whole. There is a possibility, and that's...
I think it's the other amount. Yes, it's in the consent.
Yeah, it was
and
in the
it's being-
consent as being reduced by, yeah,
21, yeah,
398.71. So it was the correct amount.
So we need to pass this motion, do we not, with this reduced amount?
Your consent?
21,000 is the consent agenda?
No, it's 20,398.71.
Well, mine says 21,698.71.
She's changed it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just giving us notice that that portion was reduced. All
It must
right,
have been changed after.
Thank you,
this
Carrie.
went out.
After yours is printed,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Any further comments, Mr. Thompson? No. No, very good. The next one, Carrie, is on the Community 150th Infrastructure Program. Anything else other than the minute details you've got here in the report for us?
Yeah, it's a quick one as far as submitting it. It's due June 9th. We do need council resolution to go in with the grant application if we're wanting to submit anything. So you have to move that today or hold a special council meeting otherwise. So I'm not sure when it was brought up at Committee of the Whole, if you had any projects in mind. You can submit more than one, but we need to priority rank them. I believe the library board did want me to mention that they would like to see the Durham branch, library branch renovation addition. The addition has to be 50% or less, but we should be prepared to go ahead with that in our 2016 budget. We don't want to get into the habit of turning grants down in there, so I'm looking for some direction, if you have any projects that you want me to apply for.
What are the thoughts of council? Many places to go. No time to prepare by the looks of it. Doug or Carol? Both of you've got, go ahead, Doug. You hit it first.
I agree that it's a short timeline. It would have been nice to have public input, I think, on what projects we might apply for. But obviously, we don't have time to do that. So I'm thinking we need to make a list and prioritize that list of what the important things are. And again, it's time. When can we do that? If we don't do it today, it leaves it pretty late. One of the things that I would like to see us do, and it's maybe not a high priority, but one of the things that I've campaigned on is to do some work on fitness trails in the area, whether it be all around West Grey. But again, I know there's a lot of other priorities that are higher than that at this point, so that's basically where I am coming from on this.
Okay, Carol?
Thank you. I did just want to point out that somewhere I read that they're giving priority to grants that are at 33%. It's up to 50, but priority is going to be given to those 33. And I think it's premature at this point to apply for the library because we don't know what we're doing. And to apply for the money first, and then we haven't a plan at this point. So I would doubt, unless it would happen very quickly, that it would be ready for the budget of next year. So I think you have your plan first, and then you apply for grants. And there could well be, with the federal election coming up, there could well be more grants coming up that we might be a little bit more ready. And I think Doug's idea is a good idea, that we prepare something, a priority list, so when you're hit with something like this with about 2 weeks to apply, that you have something in your pocket.
Carrie, did I read in here somewhere how much was across Canada was in this fund? I think it's 100 million. 150, sorry, it's 150 million?
I think it's 150, but you can apply for a contribution up to a maximum of 1 million. Priority will be given for smaller projects because the intention is to do as much with it as they can when you read through it. But the maximum contribution for any single project would be 1 million.
And I think, Councillor Lawrence, you said that you did mention something about an election coming up and maybe more grants coming out. Yeah. Might be, a change in government might make the grants even bigger. But,
Count on it.
but at 150 million across Canada with a little over 300, in actuality, we're looking at about 500,000 per riding. If they're going to spread it, yeah. A library building of I definitely agree with you, at 1.2 or 1.4 million. West Grey's not going to get all of Grey Bruce Owen Sound's allotment, so I think we better find something where we're in the range, maybe a little bit more. Bev, and then I'll come to you, Doug.
Well, it says here in the last bullet that distribution systems, drinking water, etc., waste management. What about our water tower or our water holding tank, and what about anything in there? Because that's always a huge dollar factor and probably more important than the expansion to the library. Do we have something that is sort of semi-ready that could be applied for there as far as the water tower goes, or Ken, I guess?
Ken?
Yeah, we've applied for a grant, I believe, at least twice, maybe 3 times for the new well connection. It's 800 and some thousand it's estimated at, so that's getting up there pretty good too for this type of a grant. It's, as Mayor Eccles has said, it's what, 500,000 for each riding approximately, so.
Well, yeah, if you divided it up evenly, sometimes there's other ridings that get more than just little old Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
it's up fairly, yeah, it may not be $1 million, but it's in the range.
Okay, I'm going to go to Doug and then back to Carol. Go ahead, Doug.
I guess that was just the sort of the same timeframe. I was just going to ask Ken or Larry, maybe they have a suggestion, maybe of where we might prioritize or where we might spend this money if we got it. Any ideas, any suggestions?
Or do you already have a list, Carrie?
Some of those water projects are big projects again. You get into big dollars, whether we want to try or not for that. But
Larry?
Your worship, based on the scope of the program we may be getting into and the available funding that might be available, we have made application already under an accessibility to put door openers and push button entrances into our recreational facilities. That may be something we may wish to try again, because we have applied, I believe, in my tenure here at least 4 times for funding for that and been turned down for 3, if I'm not mistaken. We have made application under the current funding for federal assistance through Mr. Miller, but in this case, this might be something that may be a benefit to the municipality as well, to make application again, because we will not hear from that accessibility fund until later in the year, whereas if we were to hear in advance, then we could, as the treasurer has said, it's not good to turn funding down, but at least we're consistent and looking for the same type of approach, and that is something that was identified by this council as a priority, and I just wonder if that might be something, since it is already in the chute, that may be able to be pulled together rather quickly and could be endorsed by council. Just a thought, your worship.
Okay. All right, thanks, Larry. Carol?
Well, I was just going to agree with Bev that as far as the number 1 well, or number 2 well, we have to do that. We know that. And if there was an opportunity of getting something here, and we've got, I'm sure we have all the information we need to fill out an application, and you've done it 2 or 3 times, so it wouldn't take long to put that together. The worst they can say is no. Doesn't hurt to try, but Larry has a good idea as well, if we wanted to apply twice for the same thing, for the door openers. Might have a better chance of getting a smaller grant.
And as you said, Gary, you can put in 2 or 3, grants and rank them. We can do it as a notice of motion. Give us a few minutes to multitask here as we go through the rest of the report. Taking a look, the door openers, the accessibility, that may allow us to look at a few other facilities as well too. Newstead, Ayton. There is, yeah, we've got them.
door openers we were doing this year, right? Oh, just the recreation facility.
Go ahead.
The only ones we have in the budget, I think, are the Durham ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and not all of them, just the ones on the washrooms.
Okay, because those ones won't qualify. We
No,
can't
the-
spend money.
And that was
for
4.
April of next year.
Yeah, that was 4, but to get the rest of the Durham ones in Eaton and Newstead, I think that's what our application was for. Yeah.
Sorry, Adam, didn't have my mic on. The other one is there is some, and I don't know whether this would be a third. It seems like we have one water, the water system here in Durham for hooking up that second well and or the tower. Two is the accessibility buttons. The third one is there seems to be a priority always on partnerships. Is there an opportunity for the Saugeen Municipal Airport to partner with the three partners there and put in an application for the airport? Because I do see that that's one of the spots here. There is some capital improvement there on the runways and a couple of other projects there. So is that an opportunity as well too? Okay. With that.
We'd have to pull that together pretty quickly, though, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure there's anything, you may know this better than I, but I'm not sure there's anything prepared, like that would be grant ready to apply. And well, yeah, I mean, the runway has to be redone, but we'd have to also have discussion with Hanover and Brockton.
Being a week away, it's going to be a little difficult to pull that together, but I'm wondering in the motion whether we could do that as a third priority, see if there would be time to get that together on the airport. For a lot of economic development opportunity there and accessibility. Okay. Bev?
Just one comment after we apply and whether we get it or not. I'm not sure when the application process ends and we would know. But I believe we should send rather a nasty letter to the provincial government and tell them to quit asking us to do these.
This is federal government.
Federal, to quit them doing, 9-day turnarounds for these kind of projects. It's just ridiculous. But don't do it before.
Do you want to wait until, what is it, the 28th of October, I believe, isn't it, or something around that?
We don't get the grant.
Fired up. Okay. Is there a consensus, or is there something else out there that council can think of right off the top of our heads and give staff enough time to get the application in? All right. Okay, then we're going to go water. Are you going to go door openers, water, and see whether we can work something with the airport? Okay.
Yep.
Anything else in, Carrie?
I do have an item. I've received a letter from the West Grey Durham Lions Club. They're looking for approval to hold their fireworks display on Saturday, June 27th. So I believe Mark had prepared a motion that you can do as a direct motion at the end of the meeting. And then also looking for financial support. So it just confirms the amount. We had $500 in our grants to organizations, but they are looking for approval to use the ball fund again at the Durham Arena. So.
Okay. All right, any questions for Carrie on that? We'll introduce that as a notice of motion then too. Okay. All right, if that's it, is there no other questions? Do you want some timesheets done up? I did see Mr. Bell, he's got a blank one here beside me. He hasn't got his filled out yet either, so. Okay. All right, thank you, Carrie. And I'm going to ask for council, do you want to take a 2-minute break? Very good. All right, that'll be good. Okay, thank you very much for your indulgence. We'll call the meeting back to order. And get down on the agenda, and I believe we're down to Larry's report here. Or sorry, the clerk's report. Oh, so that'll be you, Joanne. No, Mark's report is the next one, and it is the first part. And are you going to carry this through if we need any staff input, Larry? Yeah? Yeah?
Based on conversations with the clerk last week, this was a request from Moose Power Incorporated, which is a solar panel developer, looking at doing some programs in West Grey. The email from Moose Power, as indicated in Mark's report, were for solar commercial rooftop projects. However, Mark has made note that a number of them are land-based projects. So that is the request from Moose Power. So we look to council for direction if they wish to pass a blanket or require them to come to council for each individual application.
Any thoughts on it at this point in time? Deputy Mayor Bell, John?
Quick question, were they here before, this company? Because we had a couple of solar presentations. Were these people one of them or not?
No.
Okay.
Personally, I don't remember it being Moose Power. There was you're exactly right, there was a couple of other ones, and I don't believe that it was, certainly wasn't Moose.
No.
And it was a different company again that was in hydro that asked us for the FIT contract support for the hydro one as well too.
Right.
Doug?
One of the questions I have, this blanket signage that we're going to give them, this isn't a monopoly, is it, by any chance? Does it give them monopoly rights to solar power in our area, or, like, I just wondered about that.
I don't believe it would give them monopoly. It may give them a step up, if you would, because they would already have municipal approval to go ahead with the project. But a monopoly is a very strong word, and I would not use that in this case as a descriptor.
Okay.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah,
Councillor Thompson?
I don't think we should be doing that. There's other companies out there, and if these people want to come, like everybody else, come before council and explain their company and so on, I don't think we should be giving them a blanket agreement.
Okay. If I do remember correspondence, I think it was late Friday afternoon, Mark was in discussion and they wanted to come to council as a delegation, but this morning.
No.
Yeah, and that was about 4 o'clock on Friday when they made that known. I'm not certain when the FIT applications, is there a deadline for FIT applications on solar? Are we aware? I didn't see anything in the correspondence that it was time sensitive. Yeah, poor planning on their part does not create an emergency on our part. Is that the age-old one, Joel Gray statement? Okay. Consensus being then that we will, if they're interested, we'll get more, they can supply us with more information on this. One of the things that I was going to have they make contact with the municipality if this is a rooftop aspect that they were looking at. There's a number of municipal buildings that may or could qualify, but we're not part of that partnership at this point in time? I didn't think so.
Well, I was going to say there, I read through it, but I didn't see anywhere where they were being specific as to where or when or how. So they want a blanket okay from council to receive the program, but there is no information to us as to any projects that are actually on the go. So I think they're really jumping the gun. I think they need to come to council, do a presentation, tell us what they're looking at, where, when, how. Asking, we need to maybe put forward some of our own facilities and see what they're saying. I mean, if they're coming from us, then they need to come to us.
It's always nice to have of face you can put to those cooperative partnership programs.
Yes.
Carol?
Well, I just want to mention that we talked about this at the Airport Commission just last time about some rooftop panels on some of the hangars there. So, I mean, that might be another opportunity, but I certainly think they need to come to council, make a presentation. We need to be able to ask some questions, and I wouldn't be in favor of passing them.
Okay. I'm going to say that we can move on with this if they need be. It's certainly not that we're not entertaining the fact, but it's a bit sparse on facts right now to make a decision on this as a blanket one aspect. Was it 2 years ago that we did what we give reference in, and if I can, I'm not sure it was solar power, one of the solar companies out there came to us and we give to each individual one, and I believe there was another one that had 3 or 4 projects that was blanket, but we had an idea of exactly where it was. I know one of the concerns for Deputy Mayor Bell is agricultural land and the aspect or the idea of covering some good agricultural land with solar panels. If I can paraphrase for you, sir.
Go ahead.
That's not the best use of rural land, is to throw a bunch of solar panels on it.
Doesn't matter if it's class 4 or not.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Second one then, we will respond back. We'll ask you, Larry or Mark, to send back some questions towards Moose Power and that we would like to have a little more information and possibly, if it fits into their time schedule, a presentation. Okay. Trent Lakes. Interesting comments here from Trent Lakes looking for municipal support on the Aggregate Resource Act, an amendment to the Aggregate Resource. I can say that the county, I'm not sure whether it was the TAPS committee and or the Corporate Services Committee, but I know it was one of the two, have spoke to this, and the committee itself at the county was not supportive of this. It's trying to dig in and dictate a little bit more towards private enterprise.
Yep.
You know, it's up to the individuals. I guess it would be setting the precedent, I believe, from the committee's perspective at the county, was setting a precedent to dictate not only on aggregate, but then you could spread that across how many French fry stands you have, how many car dealerships you have, or anything of that nature. So I've rambled enough. Is there any other comments on the Trent Lake request? Don, Councillor Marshall.
I guess gravel is a little different than a French fry place, though. Is that gravel is a non-renewable resource. Most of our non-renewable resource in gravel is probably headed to the GTA in some time or another. And I believe that right now we're seeing a lot of applications for gravel pits because maybe we know that rules will change in the next 20 or 30 years, so they're trying to get all these pits licensed now to sit dormant, like one big one out near Priceville has. They got about 1,000 acres licensed. They can take out about 800,000 tons a year, and I'm not sure if they've hauled any. And I think their license, they got licensed back in the 70s or 80s. So I think that they should have to show a need for aggregate extraction, just for some control.
Any further comments on this? What's the wish of council? We'll introduce the motion and or Bev?
I agree with Don. The only thing is that I think This particular motion, if we were to support it, I don't particularly like the wording. We could do, maybe Don could prepare another motion that could be brought forward. I'm not sure that did you read this motion right through? It just seems to not be specific enough as to what they're requesting from the provincial government. Is need for what, where, when, how, like it's just too open-ended. So maybe Don could work on that.
Okay, Don, further? Go ahead.
I guess I think all they're asking is that the province take another look at the provincial policy statement and the Agri Resources Act to make some changes. So I'm not sure the motion has to be that exact of what we want to see, just that they want to see it changed. But it doesn't have to prove a need. Whether it be today's need or 5 years in the future need, but they can't license that. I think I figured out one time that it was the amount of licensed pit material per year that they can take out in West Grey is, it was huge, 4 or 5 million tons or whatever it was.
If everybody was doing it.
And if everybody hauled their maximum load out, and we're only taking out a small little percentage of that. But this big business is controlling the aggregate extraction. And we know how some of our residents are a little upset when they see a gravel pit come into their area.
My only
Councillor
concern
Hutchison.
with that is, is it going to create more red tape? Like there's a lot of paperwork that goes involved in a lot of things, and I don't know if this is going to slow things down or not, but that would be my only concern, is that it's just one more hurdle that you have to jump through.
And I guess from my perspective, if we leave it at private enterprise is not going to extract unless there is a profit line in there. That's what private enterprise is there to do. And as you said yourself, Don, there's a few pits that have been in West Grey. I know a few individuals that fought those licenses and whatnot, and there hasn't been a ton of gravel extracted from them yet, so there's still no, just because the pit's there, doesn't mean that it's going to open up. And it was going to, the individual said how much it was going to affect their life and their lifestyle. The pit never changed, the use of the land never changed until at some point well into the future now, before the extraction will happen, when the proponent could say that the need was there, and that's when they will start. Because one thing with aggregate, it's not like a cattle beast that we have here in Grey County, that 100% of the cattle beasts are used in Grey County for consumption here. They're also shipped down to Toronto, and some of them even end up in Korea, South Korea, China, all over the world. So it's not the use, but it's where that demand is needed. And until that demand, and those individuals that fought it those number of years ago lived, and the landscape never changed at all, and some of them are in that cemetery, maybe not out in West Bentic, but that's where they are today, still waiting for that. So my concern is changing the need. Are you looking to change the whole act and say whether it's private enterprise that works with this, and or going to public, and I know you've said that before yourself, going to public control over the resource? And that comes into a whole different scheme of things as well, too. Any comment? Has Mark got a motion? Does council want to put the motion forward? There it is for you, Don. Imagine if it is, you would want to support it. So we do have a motion there. If you want to introduce it, I would leave it for note and file, but. Well, the motion is there, but I do not have a seconder for the motion. So I'm going to say that Wes Gray will put Evan the minutes that has received, and would certainly look forward to some discussion on the Aggregate Resource Act because of the amount of aggregate resource that's here. But it's a little premature to be asking for a minimal amendment to that Aggregate Resource Act at this point in time. So we'll have that note and filed, or received for information. Okay. Anything else that Mark had for us, Joanne? No. Okay. Then we're down to bylaws. All right. And I'll pass these out for numbering. So the first bylaw is one that was brought over from the last council meeting, is bylaw number 30, entering into an agreement with East Durham Wind LP. Basically an amendment to bylaw number 26 that we passed the meeting before. Okay. I have a motion moved by John A. Bell and seconded by Rob Thompson. Be it resolved that bylaw number 30, 2015, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement between the Municipality of West Grey and East Durham Wind LP respecting the installation and or affixing of infrastructure on the Ganelg Center Bridge, bridge number 43, be now read a first, second, and third time. Passed and numbered, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the CEO, deputy clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Is there any I'm going to vary just slightly on comments. We do have representation from East Durham Wind here, and I believe Mr. Dick, you are the legal counsel that's requesting this amendment. For council's sake, and I'm going to step slightly outside and ask if you could give us the reason on this one-line change that East Durham Wind is so adamant on inserting into the document. If that's possible. Thank you, Tyson. Could I get you, you'll punch buttons until the red, there you go.
There we go. I should have learned my lesson already. I know you received separate legal advice from Mr. Velboom on this, so I can keep this brief, but feel free to let me know if you have any other questions. The amendment itself is really a typical provision in these types of agreements, which allows a security interest in the agreement to be assigned to a bank that's financing the project. Now, I know there was some discussion and some questions at the last meeting around whether that could actually create any interest in property in the municipality. And because of the nature of this agreement, it's a license agreement, and by their very nature, license agreements don't create any interest in real property. So there's no concern about a mortgage or a charge being created in property through the addition of this provision. What it essentially does is, in the very unlikely case that East Durham isn't around one day, it allows a bank to step into the shoes of East Durham. And from the bank's perspective, they would have every incentive to keep maintaining the obligations of East Durham under this agreement, because in doing so, they would allow the bridge attachment to remain in place and the wind project to continue to produce power and produce revenue that the bank would be looking for at the end of the day. So it's really just the ability of the bank to step into the shoes only in respect of this agreement, not in respect of any property or any other lands in the municipality, just to make sure that they can live up to East Durham's obligations under this agreement. And on that regard, I think Mr. Veldum did a good job in drafting this agreement and putting protections and obligations on East Durham that would include insurance requirements, security requirements, obligations for the ongoing maintenance of this bridge attachment to ensure that the municipality's interests are protected. So it's just the one slight change that we're requesting today.
Okay. Would you entertain any questions or comments from council
Sure.
that would be available?
Yeah, if there are any I can answer, I'm happy.
If we can ask the questions of legal counsel and make sure that East Durham Wind is paying for the legal counsel today, that'd be great. Carol?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I totally disagree with the amendment that's come in here, and I don't know that it came from Ed. It came at the request of NextEra, East Durham, as far as I know. It must be terribly important to them to have two of their big guns here today, and there's been an awful push to get this through. I totally disagree that they can assign the agreement without the approval of council. I'm not saying that council would withhold that for whatever reason, but there's no way that it should not come before council that we give our approval or no approval for it to be assigned to it says to an affiliate, a lender, or a mortgagee. I don't think that's asking too much. I certainly wouldn't want to be sitting on this council and have East Durham or NextEra tell us that within 20 days they have assigned this. And I can't see any objection on the part of East Durham if it merely says it has to have council's approval. I will be asking for a recorded vote on this, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say too, if this is turned down, then bylaw 26 will stand as it was approved two meetings ago. And I guess I would ask a question. Why would you not have in there that it requires the approval of council, since it's our bridge?
Generally, there is an exception to the approval requirements for an assignment like this to just the parties you mentioned, affiliates, lenders, and the like. It's very common in these types of agreements because there's an understanding that that type of assignment benefits both parties. Like I said, in the unlikely event that East Durham wouldn't be around and there's a bank lending money to the project, you'd essentially benefit from having the bank come in and take over those obligations, ensure that that security is maintained for the bridge attachment, that the insurance is still in place. So it's the type of assignment that's not to a third party that doesn't have any interest in the agreement at all. It's to a party like a bank financing the project that has every interest in keeping the project up and running and maintaining those obligations. So oftentimes there's just the very exception we're talking about.
Well, that's a very slick explanation, but the same thing would happen even if it said council had to give approval, and in that case, council would not withhold approval, but at least it would come in front here. But I don't care if it's normal in these agreements. It's this council's prerogative whether they agree with it or not.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Bell? John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am probably struggling with this a little bit, and I'll tell you why. We have significant, shall we say, financial resources invested in the lawyer in this project, and now not to, I just think, trust and or heed the lawyer's advice after he's had this for and made 2 or 3 different comments on it. I'm just not exactly sure how that reads, I'm certainly not going to think that I'm smarter than a lawyer. No offense. But I think I
You're
am.
pretty confident.
I am, but after our lawyer looking at this 2 or 3 different times, and he says that this is okay, I'm certainly not going to be going against his advice, because I don't need to end up with the municipality back in court or something like that. That's my opinion.
Okay. Bev?
My only concern is that we tried to speak and ask questions of Mr. Velblum, and he was unavailable. I would like to see this tabled until we have the opportunity to speak to him and get our questions answered. And in that case, then we can move forward with a clearer conscience, because I do have some questions, definitely. I know he's written us back, but we have not had a one-on-one conversation with him to ask our questions and have them answered specifically, so.
Larry?
Your worship, through you to Bev, there was a movement here, you might have noticed out of the corner of your eye, that Mr. Velblum did call back this morning, and while we were on break, I did make a quick call to him, and he just reiterated that that was his opinion, that it had not changed, and that it's based on his findings and the other dealings that he's done with, so he stands by his opinion.
We didn't get to ask our questions, so that would be my concern. I do have some questions, so.
Any other comments? I think the one thing that I've seen from Mr. Velblum and reiterated by Mr. Dick was that this is the license agreement, and it's not on the property itself. Is that?
That's correct.
My understanding, through yours, would be correct. And it's not as in, if I would say, there's some comment from some legal opinions that the lease that's on the property owners, other companies have used that and it's become an encumbrance, but a license could not be an encumbrance on the property if it was assigned?
That's correct. Licenses don't create any interest in real property, and that's different than a lease or an easement, for example.
License and or an easement. Okay. We have, as a municipality, have signed a couple of other agreements under duress with East Durham Wind. And the one I'm really thinking about is the road use, or the road agreement for the collection lines. And how does that agreement, can you off the top of your head state that the same in there is the same that's in this one?
Your worship, are you referring to the county agreement, the Grey County agreement on collection locations?
Well, the Grey County agreement, but there's also one with the municipality on utilities being in the road allowance, and I believe that that utility, the collection cable's in the road allowance on the municipal road allowances. There is one on the
With
county
respect to
one.
the location in West Grey road allowances, that's something that went through the OEB and resulted in an OEB decision and order on the location, which is different than the county agreements, which you might be referring to, which do include the same language, essentially.
Right. Okay. And that was vetted through a different legal firm as well, too. Okay. Any further discussion? Comments? Would it be an absolute problem for East Durham Wind if this bylaw was turned down and 26 was the one that was in place?
Yes, it would be, and that's why we're here today.
Why? That's the reason why. Why is that such a problem that they come back to us to get permission? Why is it, that's why we're so
No,
concerned here.
I understand the concern.
Okay, so
And-
why is that?
And I think the key in it is that when there is a bank lending money to a project like this, that happens on a relatively quick timeline. And at the end of the day, we want to ensure that at the outset, that type of arrangement, which is a very typical arrangement, is contemplated in the agreement now, because during a financing, certain timelines have to be met. And if there was a delay coming back to get a consent, which, from time to time there can be, that can create an issue during the financing. Not to say that it can't ultimately be resolved, but oftentimes it's prudent to deal with these type of arrangements at the outset.
So this particular clause is solely to the benefit of Nextera.
No, I disagree. I disagree with that, and that just goes back to the point I made earlier. I think it's in the interests of the municipality as well to have this type of assignment provision in place to allow that financing to occur, to essentially allow the bank to backstop the obligations of this agreement, the obligations to maintain that security, to maintain that financial assurance, maintain the insurance provisions, the requirements for ongoing inspection. You're essentially getting a bank to backstop the obligations of East Durham.
But if it's to our benefit, then we are going to give approval. Here, we don't have to give approval anymore. So now you're saying that it's to our benefit, but because of the fact that we're going to get that, but if you brought that back to us, it would be in our best interest, and we're intelligent enough to figure that out, that we would give approval for that. So by doing this, we're giving up any rights to say that we are going to give approval. And that to me, I'm sorry, in my opinion, that to me with this particular company is very dangerous. And I warn council that having dealt with this for 6 years, it's dangerous. So I would just suggest we go back to the way it was.
Any other comments? The only thing I'll say to that, Bev, is that Mr. Veldblum has given council the opinion that this is a very normal and general language in agreements such as this.
And under normal and general language for normal and general companies, I would agree.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Sorry, Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Well, I think in some ways that they are giving it, or the Durham East Wind is asking for our consent right now. So I think rather than doing it later, I don't see any reason why we can't do it now. Our lawyers are in agreement that this seems to be normal procedures, and I just think that we need to go ahead.
Okay. Enough discussion. I'm going to ask Joanne. Ask for the vote. Councillor Lawrence has asked for the recorded vote. You want me to read the motion again?
Please.
All right. Sorry.
Just make sure we know.
The motion was moved by John Abel, seconded by Rob Thompson. Be it resolved that bylaw number 30, 2015, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement between the Municipality of West Grey and East Durham Wind LP respecting the installation and/or affixing of infrastructure on the Ganelg Centre Bridge number 43, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and the CEO, Deputy Clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. And just for reference, bylaw number 30, the only difference that I'm aware of in that bylaw is in section 12, that the assignment can be made with notice, but not under consent.
That's correct.
Of assigning to an assignment to a mortgagee, lender, and somebody else. Councillor Lawrence. Carol?
Just for clarification then, if bylaw 30 fails to pass, Bylaw 26 stands, which gives them the authority to attach to the bridge and all the other things in this, just they have to have approval to assign that. They have to come to council for approval for an assignment of the
Yes,
lease.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's my understanding of the way 26 is written.
So by turning down 30, we are not denying them the right to put it on the bridge. Right?
That's correct. Okay? All right.
Yes.
Councillor Cutting? No. Mayor Eccles?
Yes.
Councillor Hutchison?
Yes.
Councillor Long? No. Councillor Marshall?
Yes.
And Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, the motion has been, bylaw's been carried, 5-2 on a recorded vote. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Dick, for supplying that information on a moment's notice. Appreciate that. Moving on, bylaw number 33 is a bylaw to establish and regulate the Elmwood Fire Department. I have a motion moved by Don B. Marshall and seconded by Bev Cutting. Be it resolved that bylaw number 33, 2015, being a bylaw to establish and regulate the Elmwood Fire Department, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the CEO, deputy clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Is there any discussion or questions on this bylaw? Bev?
This was just reviewed by the Elmwood Fire Board. The chief had found a few discrepancies in it and had removed some things from the operating bylaw and put it into here, so it's just basically a cleanup. There is really no real changes to it.
There is one spot, if I could, as I find it, it's near the end. And it deals with that the Elmwood Fire agreements, oh, I forgot to put in which section it was, that the budget may be approved by the councils? No, it does not. Well, and I forgot to write it down as to what clause it was. Would that be where it is? No. No, that's not the one. Sorry for this. It's near the end.
of the, is done through council, but that's number 5, talks about corporation approved by council, but it says it has to be approved by council. I don't remember anything about it.
Reading staff levels down to 10 feet. Changes that may be required.
That's where it is, Don. The staff levels, that's exactly where it is. Thank you, Don. Staff levels shall be reported to the joint for approval, and said changes may be required to be adopted by the councils if deemed necessary by the joint board. So it says that what I'm reading in that is that the joint board can, will, could approve any of those changes in the rank of the and structure of the organization.
It was just
But
staff
may,
level.
yes. The fire chief shall determine the rank and organizational structure for the fire and emergency service division with the approval of the joint board. Any changes to the structural and organization of the fire and emergency services shall be reported to the joint board for approval, shall be reported to the joint board for approval, and said changes may be required to be adopted by councils. So if you want to go to 75 members or you want to go to a full-time, then it's the joint board. It's not the councils that have that authority. That's...
But under our agreement between
Go
the
ahead.
two, does it not say that everything has to be approved by council? We can change that to shall. I mean, that's not an issue. But I believe that under our joint agreement between Brockton and West Grey, that we do have to have approval by councils. But
Yeah.
we can certainly change that to shall.
And that's where I would like, yeah.
Yep.
I was thinking,
Well,
we got to
let's-
make it consistent.
Yep, we can take that back and point it out and have it adopted again by the joint board and then brought back next time. So you can, if you want to just table that, we can take it back.
If that's the feeling of the chair, that you want it
Yep.
to go back or
I think we
changes
should.
made? Okay.
Yep.
Carol?
I just wondered, in the agreement, does it state that after the approval of the board, that the budgets have to be approved by council?
Yes.
Because when you read 13, it says the fire chief shall submit to the joint board for approval the annual budget estimates for the fire department, and on and on. It doesn't say anywhere that it's then forwarded to council or must be approved by council.
Yeah, so we
So
can,
maybe that needs to be in there
that's
as
number
well.
13
Yeah.
and number, what was the other number?
B.
Appendix B.
Schedule B.
Appendix B.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
My apologies for not putting us through that search. So this has been moved and seconded and introduced. Procedurally, I'm going to look towards Larry. Procedurally, defer, have a motion to defer and/or table?
Two options to look at, Your Worship. If you want to give it first and second reading and then send it back for amendment prior to third reading, or you could table the bylaw at this point in time, which would stop discussion, and then it would go back until it's you table it based on having this wording revised, and then wait until it is revised and sent back, would be the two options that I would suggest.
Well, I've already introduced it first, second, and third time, so I think we're on to tabling now.
Oh, I'm
As a
sorry.
motion. Yeah.
I'm used to first and second and then having a third separate. Sorry, I apologize, Your Worship.
Yeah, okay. So can I have somebody, moved by Carol, seconded by Bev, to table bylaw number 33? to a future date. Motion to table is without discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, so we'll make note of that one, that we've tabled it until we can get that clarification there. Next one is bylaw number 34. And this one is dealing, the one that Ken talked about was on the garbage bag tags. I have a motion moved by Bev Cutting, seconded by Don B. Marshall. Be it resolved that bylaw number 34, 2015, being a bylaw to further amend bylaw number 86, 2011, being a bylaw to provide a policy for distribution and sale of West Grey garbage bag tags, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the CEO, deputy clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions or comments on this motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And bylaw number 35 is the confirming bylaw. I have a motion moved by Rob Thompson, seconded by Doug Hutchison. Be it resolved that bylaw number 35, 2015, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the June 1st, 2015 council meeting, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the CEO, deputy clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right. Now, if I'm not mistaken, any new business at this point in time? Addendums, don't believe there are any. Notice of motion or direct motions. Ken, you've had one, and I believe Carrie had a couple as well too. So I have 3 direct motions. 2 from Carrie. One is the Durham Lions for the hosting of the fireworks and the use of the ball diamonds. Second is the application for the Durham Well 2A automatic door openers in Saugeen Airport for that application. And the third one is Ken's to appoint 2 councillors, Hutchison and Marshall, and a alternate Cutting to a direct waste management partnership working group. I'll need 2/3 majority to introduce these 3 motions. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is declared. There's the 3 motions. I had them out for signing. Thanks, Joanne. So the first motion is moved by Rob Thompson, second by John A. Bell. Be it resolved that the Council Municipality of West Grey does appoint Councillors Don B. Marshall and Doug Hutchison, along with the CEO, Deputy Clerk, and the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works to a joint waste management committee with the Township of Chatsworth and the Municipality of Grey Highlands. And further, Councillor Bev Cutting be appointed as an alternate. Any questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, thanks, Joanne. Second one is on the use of the Durham ball diamonds by the West Grey Durham Lions Club. The motion moved by Carol Lawrence, seconded by Bev Cutting. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby grants permission for the West Grey Durham Lions Club to host a fireworks display on the Durham ball diamonds on Saturday, June 27th, 2015, and further that Council approves a donation of $500 towards the Durham Loves Canada event. Any questions on this? It's been a very successful event. Ryan Don for 7 years now? 6 or 7? Very good. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And the last direct motion is one for approving the grant application or the priorities for a grant application to the Canada 150 Community Infrastructure Program. I have a motion moved by Don B. Marshall and seconded by Carol Lawrence. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby approves the grant application submission for the following projects to the Canada 150 Community Infrastructure Program, ranked in priority. 1, Durham Well 2A. 2, automatic door openers. 3, Saugeen Municipal Airport. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Very good. Okay. Thank you. That's all for direct motions, Joanne. Closed session, I don't believe we have any requirement or need for closed session. Question period. At this point, we'd ask if there are any questions from any of the members of the audience on anything that was on the agenda. Very good. Municipal Act notices, I don't believe we have any that are understood at this point in time. With that, we're down to number 20. Mr. Hutchison moves that we adjourn. I'll take motion number 20. Thank you very much, Doug. And thank you for council for getting through the business. You did pretty good, Joanne. She stayed right on and kept us well within the time limits that Mark has established long before. Thank you very much for the support.